The metallic snip off the bandage scissors was the most beautiful sound I'd heard in 2 months. Dr. Thorne, his kind eyes crinkling above his mask, carefully cut through the final layer of padding. The smell of antiseptic and the sterile chill of the exam room faded into the background. And there we go, he said, his voice warm with satisfaction. He peeled away the last of the filthy, sweat-stained cast. My left leg, pale, shriveled, and oddly hairless, felt terrifyingly naked and light. The air against the skin was a strange, prickling sensation. Wow, I breathed, staring at it. It looked like a stranger's limb. Looks good. Sarah, the x-rays show excellent bridging. You've been a diligent patient, Dr. Thorne said, palpating the area gently. Some residual swelling is normal. We'll start you on a graduated weight-bearing protocol and aggressive physical therapy immediately. My mom, Claire, who had been my rock through every doctor's visit and frustrated tear since the accident, squeezed my shoulder from her chair beside me. Hear that, sweetie? You're on the home stretch. The home stretch. I repeated, the words tasting like hope. The past 8 weeks had been a blur of pain, immobility, and a frustrating dependency that chafed against my normally independent nature. The accident, a stupid, clumsy fall down our own freshly polished oak staircase, had stolen the end of summer and the beginning of fall. It had stolen my daily runs in Central Park, my ability to whip up dinner without planning, my simple, private dignity. It had forced me to rely on David for everything, and on Elena, the live-in helper we'd hastily hired. So, I can walk? I asked, the question sounding absurd even as I said it, with a boot and a crutch for support. Yes, start slow, listen to your body, and more importantly, listen to your physical therapist. Dr. Thorne admonished with a smile. No marathons next week. Just a walk to the kitchen without calling for help would be a marathon, I said, and we all laughed, a real, light laugh that felt foreign in my chest. The drive back to our brownstone in Brooklyn Heights was filled with plans. Mom chattered from the driver's seat, her relief palpable. We should stop by that little Italian place on Montague, get some of their lemon ricotta cake to celebrate. Or maybe David would prefer something savory. We could get ingredients. I could cook. Mom, it's a Tuesday afternoon. David's probably still at work, I said, but I was smiling, staring out the window at the world passing by. The ordinary sight of people walking briskly, carrying groceries, chasing dogs, it all looked different. I was about to rejoin them. Let's just go home. I want to surprise him. I'll text him to come home a little early if he can. You should. Mom agreed. He's been so worried, so attentive. David had been the model husband since the fall, taking time off work initially, arranging for Elena, handling all the insurance and medical bills, bringing me little treats, reading to me when the boredom and pain became too much. The stress had shown on him, the tired lines around his blue eyes, the slight neglect of his usually impeccable stubble, but he'd never complained. Our marriage, solid but perhaps fallen into a comfortable, busy routine before the accident, had felt rekindled in this crucible of my vulnerability. I felt a surge of love and gratitude. This ordeal was almost over, and we'd come through it stronger. I'm thinking of making that Coke au vin recipe he loves. I mused, the one that takes 3 hours. I can supervise from a kitchen stool. He'd love that. Honey, we pulled up to our beautiful 3-story brownstone. The fall leaves on the small front tree were turning gold. It looked like a postcard of the perfect, professional Brooklyn life David and I had built. Our life, I thought fiercely, back on track. Mom helped me maneuver out of the car with my new, sleek black walking boot and a single crutch. My movements were awkward, my muscles protesting their sudden recruitment. But it was movement. It was freedom. I've got it from here. Mom, really, thank you for everything. I said, kissing her cheek at the top of the stoop. Go. Dad will be wondering where you are. Call me if you need anything. She insisted, giving me one more careful hug before heading back to her car. I took a deep breath, fumbling with my keys. The house was quiet. Elena was likely out running errands or upstairs cleaning. David wasn't due home for another 2 hours. Perfect. I would get settled, maybe pour a celebratory glass of wine, and call him. I pushed the heavy front door open and stepped into the familiar, warm foyer. I was about to call out a hello when I heard voices. Low, murmuring voices coming from the direction of the kitchen. Elena's distinctive, softly accented tones, and David's deeper, measured cadence. A smile touched my lips. He was home early. Maybe he'd taken the afternoon off, planning a surprise for me too. I leaned my crutch against the wall, wanting to sneak up and hug him from behind like I used to. I took a few silent, clumsy steps across the polished wood floor towards the kitchen archway. Their voices grew clearer. They weren't in the kitchen proper, but in the adjoining sunroom. The glass doors likely closed for privacy. I was about to push through the swinging kitchen door when David's words, cold and clear as shards of ice, stopped me dead, finalizing the details for tomorrow morning. You know the plan. Elena, you drive her to the park for her physical therapy walk by the lake, the one she's been so eager to try. My heart gave a funny little jump. How did he know I wanted to walk by the lake? I'd only just thought about it in the car with Mom. Then I reasoned he must have overheard me talking to Dr. Thorne about scenic, flat places to practice walking. Elena's reply was a murmur I couldn't catch. David's voice again, impatient, sharp. No, listen. You get her to the end of the Willow Pier. It's isolated. The railing is low there, and the water is deep. It's perfect. A cold trickle, unrelated to the autumn air, started down my spine. Willow Pier, the low railing. I'd always thought that spot needed fixing. It has to look like an accident. David continued, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial hush that somehow carried even better. A tragic slip. Her leg gives out. She's disoriented from the pain meds. She falls. You'll be distraught. Of course. You ran for help. But it was too late. The world tilted. The beautiful foyer. The smell of our home. The residual ache in my leg. Everything receded, replaced by a roaring white noise in my ears. I couldn't breathe. My hand flew to my mouth, stifling the gasp that threatened to betray me. Elena said something, her voice tense. I caught the words, not sure, messy. It's not messy. It's clean, David snapped. Then his tone softened into something that was infinitely worse. A lover's reassurance. Once she's in the water, you don't wait. You don't look back. You just run and call 911. Like we practiced. The handler will be in the water. He'll make sure she doesn't come up. By the time divers recover the body, the scene will be convincing. Handler, body, won't come up. The words bounced around my skull, meaningless and yet horribly, catastrophically meaningful all at once. And then, Elena's voice was clearer now, laced with a greed that made my stomach clench. And then we wait for the insurance company to do their tedious little dance. Double indemnity for accidental death. Elena, $3 million. Once it clears, we're gone. Costa Rica, like we talked about. A fresh start. We get married on the beach. The silence that followed was thick, complicit. I could picture them embracing. David, my husband of 6 years, planning my murder with the woman we paid to help me. A violent tremor started in my good leg, threatening to buckle it. Nausea rose, bitter and hot. The image of the sunroom, the room where I'd spent so many happy mornings reading with sunlight streaming in, was now a crime scene tableau in my mind. Run, the primal instinct screamed in my head. But run where? Out the front door. Screaming, in a boot and with one crutch. He'd catch me in seconds. My car keys were in my purse, which was by the door. But could I even drive? My mind was a scrambled mess of terror. Think, Sarah, Think, the voice in my head was my own, but it sounded like Lisa's. My pragmatic, lawyer best friend. They think you're still in a cast. They think you're weak, helpless, unsuspecting. That's your only advantage. The survival instinct. Colder and sharper than the fear. Sliced through the panic. I had to move. Now, before they came out, I turned, every movement feeling monstrously loud. My crutch. I'd left it against the wall. I couldn't reach it without crossing a patch of squeaky floorboard. I abandoned it, holding onto the wall, putting minimal weight on my booted foot. I shuffled backwards, away from the kitchen, towards the front door. My eyes were fixed on the archway, expecting David or Elena to appear at any second. I made it to the foyer. My purse was on the console table. With shaking hands, I fumbled inside, my fingers closing around my phone. I didn't dare call 911. The sound of my voice, the operator's questions, it would be a death sentence. I had to get out, get to the garage, make it seem like I'd just arrived. I needed time to process, to plan, gritting my teeth against the pain that was now flaring brightly in my leg. I opened the front door, stepped out, and closed it again with a soft but definitive click. The sound was like a starting pistol. I stood on the stoop for one dizzying second, the autumn sun blinding. Then I forced my face into what I hoped was a neutral, tired expression. I rummaged in my purse again, making noise. I took a deep, shuddering breath that did nothing to calm my racing heart. Then I reopened the front door, making sure it bumped against the wall. "Honey? David? I'm home," I called out, my voice surprisingly steady, though it sounded tinny and strange to my own ears. Footsteps, swift, confident. David appeared from the direction of the kitchen, his face a masterpiece of concerned affection. He'd changed out of his work suit into jeans and a soft gray sweater. He looked handsome, loving, like the man I'd fallen for. "Sarah, you're back early. How did it go?" He came forward, arms open as if to hug me, then stopped, his eyes dropping to my leg. "The cast, it's off." "Oh, baby, that's fantastic." His joy seemed so genuine. It was a performance worthy of an award. Elena appeared behind him in the kitchen doorway, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Her pretty, usually impassive face was arranged into a polite smile. "Mrs. Miller, good news." "Yes, the best," I said, letting David fold me into a careful hug. I forced my body to relax against his, to bury my face in his sweater that smelled of his familiar cologne and something else, a faint, floral perfume that wasn't mine. Every fiber of my being screamed to recoil, to claw at his eyes. I wrapped my arms around him, feeling the solid, treacherous strength of his back. Dr. Thorne was really pleased. "I have a boot now, and I can start walking properly." I pulled back, looking up at him, searching his face. I saw the tired lines, the love in his blue eyes. Were they the eyes of a man capable of ordering my drowning? Was there a flicker of something else, calculation, impatience beneath the warmth? "That's incredible," he said, cupping my face. "I'm so proud of you. You must be exhausted. Come, sit down. Elena, could you get Sarah some water? And maybe that ginger tea she likes?" "Of course, Mr. Miller," Elena said, turning back to the kitchen. "No, it's okay. Really," I protested, letting him guide me to the living room sofa. "I'm just buzzing. You know, it feels so weird to be free of that thing." I gestured to my leg, the movement clumsy. "I bet," he said, sitting close beside me, his arm around my shoulders. "We should celebrate. Just a quiet dinner tonight. The two of us. I'll cook." "That sounds perfect," I whispered, leaning my head against his shoulder. The gesture felt like the greatest lie I'd ever told. My mind was screaming, replaying his words. "Willow Pier, handler, make sure she doesn't come up." Elena brought the tea. Her hand was perfectly steady as she set the mug on the coaster in front of me. "Congratulations, Mrs. Miller," she said, her dark eyes meeting mine for a fraction of a second too long. Was there a challenge there? A cold acknowledgement of the secret we now shared. A secret she thought was still hers alone? Thank you, Elena, I said, and took a sip of the tea. It tasted like ashes. The evening passed in a surreal haze. David cooked pasta, opened a bottle of Burlo, and talked about his day, about a big deal he was closing at the medical supply firm. I nodded, smiled, asked questions. I was an automaton, a sophisticated chat bot program to mimic Sarah Miller. Inside, a cold, hard core was forming, crystallizing around the shock. He was planning to kill me tomorrow morning. When we went to bed, he was tender, careful of my leg, holding me as he had every night since my accident. I'm just so happy you're getting better, he murmured into my hair, his breath warm against my scalp. I've missed my strong girl. I said nothing, just nestled closer, pretending to seek comfort. His heartbeat was slow and steady under my ear, the heartbeat of a man who saw me as a problem to be eliminated, a payout to be collected, long after his breathing deepened into sleep. I lay awake in the dark. The streetlight cast familiar shadows across our bedroom ceiling. This room, this bed, this man, all had been my sanctuary. Now, it was a prison, the scene of a profound, intimate betrayal. The fear was still there, a live wire in my gut, but it was being slowly, inexorably, joined by something else, a fury so deep and quiet it felt tectonic, and a resolve that was diamond hard. He thought I was weak. He thought I was broken. He thought I was his victim. My hand crept down under the duvet, past the careful space he'd left for my booted leg. My fingers found the pale, cool skin of my calf, the muscles atrophied but intact, the bone that had knit itself back together. Tomorrow morning, he'd said. I closed my eyes, not to sleep, but to plan. The mask was on. The performance of a lifetime had begun the moment I walked back through that door. The alarm buzzed at 7 a.m., its mundane chirp slicing through a night spent not sleeping, but plotting. David's arm was still draped heavily over me. I lay perfectly still, listening to his breathing, measuring the rhythm against the frantic beat of my own heart. Performance. I reminded myself. It begins now. I let out a small, deliberate groan, shifting as if in discomfort. David stirred immediately. Sweetheart, his voice was thick with sleep, laced with that practiced concern. You okay? Leg hurting? Every part of me is hurting. I thought. Just stiff. I whispered, keeping my voice weak, tinged with the exhaustion I genuinely felt. The newness of it. It's a lot. He propped himself up on an elbow, his face a mask of sympathy in the gray morning light. Of course it is. 8 weeks in a cast. Your muscles have forgotten what to do. Don't push it today. Just rest. He brushed a strand of hair from my forehead. The gesture felt like a brand. I was thinking, I said, looking up at him, making my eyes wide and slightly helpless. Maybe I should postpone that walk by the lake. The one you mentioned. It sounds like a lot. What if I fall again? I injected a tiny tremor into the last question, watching his face closely. A flicker, fast. There and gone, passed behind his eyes. Irritation? Panic? It was smoothed over in an instant. Honey, no. You can't let fear win. Dr. Thorne said gentle. Scenic walks are ideal. The path by the lake is flat, and Elena will be right with you. It'll be good for you. Mentally. His tone was encouraging, pushing just the right amount. We'll get you a proper walking stick. Not that clinical crutch. Make it enjoyable. Why skin crawled? I suppose. I conceded, letting my gaze drop as if defeated. You're probably right. I'm just tired of being a burden. You are never a burden, he said, the lie so smooth it sounded like truth. He kissed my forehead and got out of bed. I'll make coffee. You take your time. The moment the bathroom door closed behind him, I let the mask slip for just a second. My face felt stiff from the false expression. I took 3 deep, silent breaths, the way Lisa had taught me during her last brutal breakup. In for 4, hold for 7, out for 8. IT didn't calm the fear, but it sharpened the focus. The day was a masterclass in duplicity. At breakfast, I played the part of the convalescent perfectly. I fumbled with the orange juice carton, letting it slip and splash a little. Oh, darn it. I'm so clumsy. I sighed, my voice dripping with frustration. It's okay. Let me, Elena said, materializing silently with a cloth. Her movement was efficient, her expression neutral, but her eyes, when they briefly met mine, held a new, unsettling scrutiny. Was she looking for signs of suspicion, or just assessing the viability of the package she was to deliver tomorrow? Thanks, Elena, I said, offering a weak smile. I don't know what we'd do without you. The words tasted like poison. It is my job, Mrs. Miller, she replied, her tone flat. David read the news on his tablet, occasionally reading out snippets about local politics or market news. The picture of a normal husband. See, he said, pointing to an article about fall activities in Prospect Park. Everyone's out enjoying the last of the good weather. You should be part of that. I know, I mumbled, pushing my scrambled eggs around my plate. I just feel so useless. My lesson plans are gathering dust. The laundry. I can't even carry a basket. This was a calculated move, invoking my job as a 3rd-grade teacher, which I loved, and the domestic tasks I'd always managed. Played into the narrative of a woman defeated by her circumstances. Your only job is to heal, David said firmly, reaching over to squeeze my hand. Everything else can wait. What can wait? The subtext was clear. Just be a good, compliant patient until tomorrow. After he left for work with a lingering kiss and a reminder to take it easy, the real work began. The house felt different, a beautiful, spacious trap. Elena was a silent, moving component of its mechanism. I heard her vacuuming upstairs. My first objective, the home office. David kept all our important documents in a locked fireproof box in the bottom drawer of his desk. I knew where the key was, or I used to, on a ring in the ceramic bowl on his dresser. Would it still be there? I moved with deliberate, noisy clumsiness, using my single crutch to thump my way to our bedroom. The key ring was there, amidst loose change and cufflinks. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was too easy. Was it a test? I took the whole ring, jangling it slightly to mask any sound of me picking it out. Then I thumped my way to the office, leaving the door wide open. If Elena came down, I needed a plausible reason. The lock clicked open with a soft snick. Inside, the neat folders were labeled: taxes, mortgage, date, vehicles, and insurance. My fingers were ice cold as I pulled it out. There it was, a life insurance policy, taken out just over a year ago, around the time David had started talking about being responsible, about securing our future. The beneficiary, David Alexander Miller. The coverage amount, $1.5 million. But I remembered David's voice. Cold in the sunroom. Double indemnity for accidental death. $3 million that I flipped the pages. The clause was there, in dense legalese. An accidental death payout would double the sum. A wave of dizziness hit me. Seeing it in print made it horrifically, bureaucratically real. I fumbled for the phone Lisa had given me, a cheap, prepaid burner, and took several shaky pictures of the key pages. The beneficiary designation, the double indemnity rider. The flash seemed obscenely bright. I slid the policy back, locked the box, and returned the keys to the bowl, my ears straining for any sound of Elena. The vacuum cleaner was still droning upstairs. Phase 2, passive surveillance. I planted myself on the living room sofa with a book and my phone, positioned where I could see the hallway to the kitchen and the front door. I pretended to doze, my ears straining. Around 11 a.m., I heard Elena's Soft footsteps descending the stairs. She went into the kitchen. The landline phone rang. I held my breath. Miller residence. A pause. Yes, he is expecting your call. One moment. I will transfer. I heard the click of the call being forwarded to David's cell. A business call? Or something else? She hadn't used a name. Minutes later, my own phone vibrated. A text from David. How's my brave girl doing this morning? Thinking of you. Remember. Slow and steady, the loving husband. I stared at the words, imagining him typing them in some conference room or maybe from a car parked near the lake. Finalizing my murder. My thumbs trembled as I typed back. Trying to be brave. Miss you. Can't wait for our quiet dinner tonight. The emoji I added a heart felt like a small, grotesque act of violence. The afternoon was agony. Elena moved through her tasks with quiet efficiency. I tried to engage her in harmless conversation, probing gently. You've been such a help. Elena, I don't know what we would have done. You must be ready for a more exciting job than looking after an invalid. She was polishing silverware at the kitchen island. It is a good job, she said without looking up. Quiet. Mr. Miller is a fair employer. He is. I agreed, sipping water. Very thorough. Plans for everything. I let the statement hang. She paused, the polishing cloth still, for a second. Yes, he is a man who knows what he wants. The air in the kitchen grew colder. I suppose he is, I said softly, and retreated back to the sofa. My biggest test came after lunch. I needed to try recording. Lisa had shown me a simple voice memo app on the burner phone. If I could catch them discussing the plan, even a fragment. I waited until Elena was in the basement laundry room, the sound of the dryer providing cover. I tucked the burner phone, its recorder activated, into the wide pocket of my cardigan. Then, I thumped my way noisily to the sunroom, the scene of the crime, and settled by the glass doors. A blanket over my legs. The door was slightly ajar. When Elena came up, I called out, my voice pitched to Carrie. Elena, could I trouble you for more tea? And maybe one of those scones from yesterday? I'm feeling a bit peckish. She appeared in the doorway. Of course. Her gaze swept the room, lingering for a microsecond on the spot where she and David had stood. It's so peaceful in here, I babbled, playing the wistful convalescent. David was saying just last night how much he loves this room, how we should spend more time in it. I was baiting her, hoping for a reaction, a slip. She just nodded. It is a sunny room. Her tone gave nothing away. She turned to leave. Oh, Elena? I stopped her. Did David mention if he'd finalized the details for my excursion tomorrow? To the lake? He said something about a specific time? This was dangerous, direct, but I needed her voice on the recording, responding to the key topic. She froze, her back to me. For a long second, she said nothing. The hum of the dryer from below seemed to grow louder. Then, she half-turned, her profile cool. He said to be ready to leave at 9. The morning light is best, he thinks, for your mood. Her answer was flawless, innocuous, and utterly chilling. 9. Okay, thank you, I said, my voice barely a whisper. She left. I waited until I heard the kettle click on in the kitchen before fumbling the phone out of my pocket and stopping the recording. I played it back, my ear pressed to the speaker. My own voice sounded tinny and false. Elena's responses were clear, calm, and completely devoid of incriminating evidence. It is a sunny room. He said to be ready to leave at 9. Nothing. I cursed silently. I needed them talking to each other. Defeated, I headed back to the bedroom to charge the burner phone, hiding it in an old handbag at the back of my closet. As I plugged it in behind a shoebox, my hand knocked against David's laundry hamper. His suit from yesterday was bundled on top. Something made me pause. An old habit, maybe checking pockets before laundry, or the new, paranoid instinct. I patted the jacket. In the inside breast pocket, My fingers met not the familiar shape of his wallet or his primary smartphone, but the slim, hard rectangle of a second phone. My blood ran cold. I pulled it out. It was a cheap, basic model, the kind you buy with prepaid minutes. A burner, just like mine. My mind raced. This was how he was communicating with the handler. Isolated. Untraceable. I didn't dare turn it on, but I needed to see the number. With trembling fingers, I pried off the back cover. There, behind the battery, was a small, rectangular SIM card. Without thinking, acting on pure adrenaline, I slid it out. I needed the number. I could give it to Lisa. But then I heard it, the soft creak of a floorboard in the hall. Elena, panic, sharp and acidic, shot through me. I fumbled the phone. It clattered against the hamper. I shoved the SIM card into the pocket of my yoga pants, slammed the phone's back cover on, and tossed the whole thing back into the jacket just as the bedroom door pushed open. Elena stood there, holding a tray with my tea and a scone. Her eyes went from my face flushed, I was sure, to the slightly disheveled laundry hamper. I was just trying to help. I stammered, gesturing weakly, feeling useless. Thought I'd start sorting laundry. The lie was pathetic. She stared at me for a beat too long, her expression unreadable. You should not strain yourself. Mrs. Miller, that is my job. She set the tray down on the dresser, her movements precise. Her gaze swept the room, landing on the closet door, which was slightly ajar. Is everything all right? Yes, I said, forcing a smile. Just clumsy and tired. Thank you for the tea. She gave a slight nod and left, closing the door softly behind her. I leaned against the wall, my legs trembling violently. That was too close. The SIM card in my pocket felt like a burning coal. I had evidence now, a tangible piece of their plot. But I'd also likely alerted Elena. Was her silence complicity? Or would she report my odd behavior to David? The performance was getting harder. The stage felt smaller, the audience more watchful, and the curtain was set to rise on the final act in less than 24 hours. I had the SIM card, but I needed more. I needed their voices. I needed proof that could not be explained away. I looked at the tea tray. The scone looked like dust. My leg ached with a deep, throbbing pain that was both physical and a screaming reminder of my vulnerability. 9 a.m., she'd said. The morning light is best. For my mood? Or for a murder? 9 a.m., she'd said. The morning light is best. For my mood? Or for a murder? The burner phone felt like a live wire in my hand, hidden under the covers as I lay rigid beside David's sleeping form. Lisa's name, or rather, the contact saved as LC Consulting, glowed on the screen. Me, 2:14 a.m. Got it. SIM card from his secret phone. Also, they've set the time. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. Willow Pier, LC Consulting, 2:17 a.m. Holy shit. Okay, don't do anything with the SIM. Bring it. We need to move. Can you get out for coffee tomorrow? Say you need air. A change of scenery before your big walk. Me, 2:18 a.m. I'll try. He's been overly attentive. Elena watches me. LC Consulting, 2:19 a.m. Be convincing. Usual place. 10 a.m. I'll have what you need. Stay strong. Sarah, we're going to nail these bastards. Sleep was impossible. Every creak of the brownstone, every sigh from David, was a potential threat. The digital clock ticked from 2 a.m. to 3, then 4. My mind raced in fevered circles around the SIM card, now sealed in a Ziploc bag and tucked into the lining of my wallet. Proof that IT was flimsy, but it was a start. When David's alarm blared at 6.30, I flinched, a full-body jolt I couldn't hide. Whoa, easy there, he murmured, rolling over to stroke my arm. His touch made my skin crawl. Bad dream? You have no idea. I leaned into the excuse. Yeah, I whispered, letting my voice sound ragged. Just the fall. I keep reliving it. It wasn't entirely a lie. The memory of tumbling down the stairs, the sharp crack of bone, now had a sinister new framing. Was it just an accident? He'd polished those stairs himself the weekend before. It's over now, he soothed, his hand moving to my still tender calf. The possessive gesture felt like a claim check. Today's a new start, a little walk in the sunshine. You'll see. I'm scared, David, I said, turning to face him, letting my eyes well up with genuine, redirected terror. What if my leg gives out? What if I can't do it? I was baiting him, watching for any hint of anticipation. He smiled, a tender, pitying curve of his lips. You'll have Elena, and it's a perfectly flat path. I checked it myself yesterday. Of course you did. Nothing will happen. I promise. The irony of that promise hung in the air between us, thick and poisonous. He got up to shower, and the performance continued. I made myself seem more frail than I felt, asking him to hand me my robe, leaning heavily on him as I navigated to the bathroom. I needed him to see me as broken, predictable, manageable. Over breakfast, I set the next piece of my act in motion. I pushed my oatmeal around the bowl, sighing deeply. What's wrong, sweetheart? David asked, not looking up from his financial news feed. It's just being cooped up. The walls are closing in. I think I need to get out of the house before the big walk. Just for an hour. To a coffee shop. To see people who aren't my husband or my caretaker. I injected a note of petulant frustration. I feel like a child who needs scheduled playdates. David put his tablet down, his expression one of mild concern laced with calculation. Is that wise? You should conserve your energy. Sitting in a coffee shop takes less energy than obsessing over my own helplessness in this living room. I snapped, a touch of real bitterness seeping through. I need to feel normal. David, just for a minute, or I might lose my mind. I looked at him, pleading, please. He studied me. I could see him weighing the risks. A public coffee shop was safe. I'd be alone, weak, visible. What trouble could I cause? It played into the narrative of the restless, emotional invalid. All right, he conceded, his tone patronizingly gentle. But just for an hour. And you take the car service. No subway. I'll arrange for Mark to pick you up and drop you off. Mark was the driver from the black car service David's firm used. Another layer of control. A friendly chaperone. Thank you. I breathed, feigning gratitude. Inside, I was ice. He was having me watched. At 9:45 a.m., Mark's town car idled at the curb. David helped me into the back seat, his kiss on my cheek lingering. 1 hour. Sarah, I'll call you. It was an order, not a reminder. 1 hour. I agreed, forcing a smile. The car pulled away from the curb, from my beautiful prison. I watched David and Elena standing on the stoop in the rearview mirror. A perfect picture of concerned domesticity until we turned the corner, and they vanished. Where to? Mrs. Miller? Mark asked, his eyes meeting mine in the mirror. The daily grind on 7th. Please, Mark. It was a busy, anonymous spot a few blocks from Lisa's office. The city outside the window was a blur of normalcy. People living lives untouched by conspiracy. For a moment, the sheer absurdity of my situation threatened to overwhelm me. My husband hired hitman. My Bawu is his accomplice. It sounded like a bad true crime podcast. The daily grind was packed with students and freelancers. I ordered a large black coffee, I do want, and took a seat in the back, near the restrooms. My heart was a frantic bird against my ribs. At 10:02, the bell on the door jingled, and Lisa swept in. Seeing her sharp black bob, her no-nonsense trench coat, the familiar, worried frown on her face was like a lifeline thrown to a drowning woman. She spotted me, her eyes scanning the room before she approached. No hug. Lisa was in lawyer mode. She slid into the chair opposite me, placing her leather folio on the table. You look like hell, she said quietly, her gaze clinical, assessing. I feel like hell. Here. I discreetly slid the Ziploc bagged SIM card across the table. It disappeared into her folio. Tell me everything. From the moment you got home yesterday. I did. In a low, rapid monotone. I recounted the performance at breakfast, the failed recording attempt, the chillingly bland conversation with Elena, the discovery of the burner phone, and the heart-stopping moment she'd almost caught me. Lisa listened, sipping her green tea, her expression grim. When I finished, she let out a slow breath. Okay, the SIM is good. We can potentially trace numbers. But that takes time and legal muscle we don't have yet. We need irrefutable, immediate evidence, audio or video of them discussing the plan. I tried. She didn't take the bait. You need them together, Lisa stated, and you need it on record. Tonight. It's your last chance before tomorrow morning. She reached into her folio and slid a small, flat box across the table. It looked like a fancy lipstick case. This is a voice-activated recorder. High sensitivity, 72-hour battery. It's tiny. You can clip it to your bra, plant it in a room, get creative. I took the box, my fingers trembling. It felt impossibly heavy. What if they find it? They won't if you're careful. Your advantage is they think you're a non-threat, a depressed, physically broken wife. Use that. She leaned forward. Sarah, listen to me. The plan for tomorrow is clear. They're going to try to kill you. We have two choices. We go to the police tonight with what we have, the SIM. Your testimony. It's thin. David is a respected salesman with no record. He'll lawyer up instantly. Call you hysterical. Claim you're paranoid from pain meds and trauma. The insurance policy. Prudent planning. The conversation you overheard. A misunderstanding. Or your imagination. At best, it slows him down. At worst, it makes him change his plan and come at you another, less predictable way. The logic was cold and terrifying. And the second choice, we let the play unfold, but we control the stage. Lisa's eyes were hard. You wear a wire. You go to that pier. I'll be there, hidden, with my phone recording video from a distance. The moment they make a move, I call 911 and intervene. We get the attempted murder on tape, with audio of whatever they say in those final moments. That's a case that doesn't get dropped. That's life in prison. The word attempted hung in the air. It required faith that Lisa could intervene in time. It required me walking onto that pier, a lamb to the slaughter. Can you be sure? My voice was small. I'll be 50 yards away. Sarah, with a can of military-grade pepper spray and a voice loud enough to stop traffic. I won't let him touch you, but we need that evidence. She put her hand over mine. It's the only way to end this for good. I looked down at the lipstick recorder. The path was clear, and it led straight into the abyss. Okay, I whispered. Okay, she echoed, squeezing my hand. Plant the recorder tonight. Try to get them talking. About the plan, the money, anything. Then, tomorrow, you wear this. She passed me a second device, even smaller, like a button. This is a live transmitter. Clip it inside your collar. I'll hear everything in real time through an earpiece. I'll be your backup. The technology felt like a spy movie. My life had become a spy movie. What do I do until then? Go home. Be the sad, grateful wife. Complain about your leg. Talk about how nervous you are for tomorrow. Reinforce the narrative. And for God's sake, don't drink or eat anything you didn't see prepared. If they're planning a slip, they might try to dope you up tonight to make you unsteady. A fresh wave of dread washed over me. I hadn't even considered that. My phone buzzed. A text from David. Everything okay? Miss you. I showed Lisa. Reply. Keep it normal. She instructed. I typed. Just finished my coffee. People watching. Needed this. Home soon. Miss you too. I added a smiley face. The cognitive dissonance made me nauseous. 1 hour. Remember. Lisa said. standing up. Go. I'll be in position tomorrow by 8:30. You won't see me, but I'll be there. I promise. Her professionalism cracked for a second, revealing the fierce friend beneath. We're going to get through this. The ride home was a blur. The recorder and transmitter burned a hole in my purse. When Mark pulled up to the brownstone, David was waiting at the door, a smile on his face. There's my girl, he said, opening the car door for me. Feel more human? A little, I said, taking his proffered arm. Just tired. This leg is really throbbing. I leaned on him heavily, selling the weakness. Maybe an early night then, he suggested, guiding me inside. Big day tomorrow. You have no idea, yeah. I sighed. Elena picked up my prescription. Right? The stronger painkillers? I asked, testing Lisa's theory. Right on the counter, David said, pointing to the kitchen. But maybe just stick to the regular ones tonight. You need a clear head for your walk. Or a clear head to ensure I didn't fight back. I nodded weakly. The evening was a tense, quiet affair. I planted the recorder. After a painfully normal dinner, I insisted on helping set the table, using the activity to move around the dining room. I accidentally dropped my napkin behind the sideboard in the sunroom, while David and Elena cleared plates. I knelt, groaning for effect, and used a piece of gum to stick the tiny device to the underside of the wooden ledge where they'd stood the day before. It was a risk, but it was the locus of their conspiracy. Later, as David watched a baseball game and I pretended to read, I saw Elena move to the sunroom with her phone. My breath hitched. Was she going to talk to him? But she just stood by the window, scrolling silently. The recorder would capture nothing but the hum of the refrigerator. I retired early, pleading exhaustion and pain. David tucked me in, his kiss on my forehead feeling like a death sentence. Sweet dreams, he whispered. I waited in the dark. The lift transmitter button clutched in my sweaty palm. The house settled into its nighttime creaks. Then, around 11 p.m., I heard it, the soft pad of footsteps descending the stairs. Not David's heavier tread, Elena's. I strained my ears. The murmur of voices from downstairs. They were in the kitchen, not the sunroom. My heart sank. The recorder was useless. But then, a door opened and closed. The sunroom door. They'd moved. Silence for a long moment. Then, David's voice, low but clear, carried up the stairwell in the quiet house. Final confirmation. He'll be in a kayak, fishing, an early morning enthusiast who sees nothing. Elena's reply was a murmur. No, it has to be the pier. David hissed, his voice growing slightly sharper. The water is deepest there. The railing is loose. I made sure of it last week. A cold, sick certainty settled in my gut. The fall wasn't an accident. The railing was sabotaged. And after, Elena's voice, clearer now. You do exactly as we said. Scream. Run. Call 911. Be convincing. The grief-stricken, traumatized foe. By the time the police and divers get there, he'll be long gone. And she'll be gone. A pause. Then we wait. A few weeks for the insurance. Then we're on a beach. Elena. Forever. I do not like this waiting. Elena said, her accent thickening with stress. What if she suspects? David's laugh was a soft, ugly sound. Suspects? Sarah. She's on painkillers. She's depressed. She can barely walk. She trusts me. She's grateful to me. She has no idea. The arrogance in his voice was my fuel. It solidified my resolve into something cold and hard as steel. Just be calm tomorrow. Gentle. Helpful. Guide her right to the spot. The rest is inevitable. I heard the faint sound of a kiss, then footsteps moving away. I lay there in the dark, the transmitter button digging into my palm. I had it, not on the recorder I'd planted, but I had their plan. His confession about the railing. In my memory, it would have to be enough. Tomorrow, I would walk to the end of the Willow Pier, but I wouldn't be going alone, and I wouldn't be the one falling. The digital clock on David's nightstand read 11:37 p.m. The silence after the sunroom door closed downstairs was absolute and oppressive. My own breathing sounded ragged in my ears. He made sure of it last week. The words echoed, twisting the memory of my fall into something deliberate, malicious. The polished stairs, his insistence on doing it himself. Had he oiled them? Loosened a carpet rod? My mind, now a paranoid detective, re-examined every detail. But the past was a crime scene. The future was a countdown. 48 hours. No less. It was already Monday night. Wednesday morning was rushing toward me. I waited a full 30 minutes after the house fell silent, then slipped out of bed, moving with a care that had nothing to do with my injured leg. In the ensuite bathroom, behind the locked door with the fan on, I texted Lisa using the burner phone. Me, 12:11 a.m. Heard them. Confirmed. Railing at the pier is sabotaged. They mentioned a kayak as the handler's cover. Plan is unchanged. I'm clear. The reply was almost instantaneous. LC Consulting, 12:12 a.m. Jesus. Okay, we stick to our plan. Tomorrow, you get the camera. We need eyes as well as ears. Can you get out for PT? Dr. Thorne had scheduled my first official physical therapy session for Tuesday afternoon. It was my only sanctioned, predictable outing. Me, 12:13 a.m. PT at 2 p.m. St. Vincent's. LC Consulting, 12:14 a.m. I'll be in the waiting room. Bring the sim. We'll swap. The next day, Tuesday, was an exercise in sustained, high-wire acting. The knowledge of the sabotaged railing made every interaction feel like a dance on the edge of a knife. At breakfast, I leaned into the role of the anxious patient. I don't know, David, I said, stirring my yogurt without eating it. This walk tomorrow, it feels like a test. What if I'm not ready? I let my lower lip tremble, just slightly. David put down his coffee, his expression the perfect blend of encouragement and mild exasperation. Sarah, darling, you can't stay inside forever. Dr. Thorne said mobility is crucial. It's a flat, paved path. Elena will be your spotter. It's the logical next step. His tone was that of a reasonable man explaining something simple to a child. Think of it as a victory lap. I just want to make you proud. I murmured, looking down at my hands. He reached across the table, covering my hand with his. The touch was warm, possessive. You already do. Taking this step will make me even prouder. His blue eyes held mine. We'll get through this. Our life is waiting for us on the other side of this setback. The other side of my corpse, that I thought. But I managed a watery smile. Our life. I've been thinking, once I'm back on my feet, maybe we should start trying. For a family. The words felt like ash in my mouth. But I saw his eyes widen a fraction. A complex flicker of surprise, guilt, and quick calculation passing through them. It was the ultimate reinforcement of my blind, trusting devotion. He recovered swiftly, squeezing my hand. That's a beautiful thought. Honey, let's get you healed first. One thing at a time. He stood, brushing a kiss on my head. I've got a crazy day. Big final pre-meeting for the grant deal. I might be late, or finalizing my murder with a handler that I mentally added. You focus on PT this afternoon. Listen to the therapist. I will. I promised. Elena drove me to St. Vincent's in the afternoon. The car ride was silent, tense. I caught her watching me in the rear view mirror several times. Her gaze assessing. You are nervous for tomorrow. Mrs. Miller? She asked suddenly, her voice neutral. Terrified. I admitted freely, which was the truth. It feels like a point of no return. In more ways than you know. Mr. Miller only wants what is best for you, she said. The party line delivered without inflection. I know. I sighed, looking out the window. I'm lucky to have you both. The physical therapy room was a bright, noisy space full of effort and strain. My therapist, A relentlessly cheerful woman named Chloe put me through a series of painful but manageable exercises. Great work. Sarah, you're stronger than you think, she chirped. The normality of it was surreal. After the session, limping and genuinely sore, I entered the main waiting room, and there, flipping idly through a People magazine, was Lisa. Our eyes met for a split second. Then she looked back at her magazine. I took a seat 2 chairs away. A minute later, she stood, gathering her bag. As she passed me, her folio slipped from her grasp, papers scattering at my feet. "Oh, clumsy me. I'm so sorry," she exclaimed, bending to gather them. "It's okay. Let me help," I said, leaning down. In the shielded space between our bodies and the chairs, the exchange happened in seconds. I slipped the Ziploc with David's SIM card into her open folio. She pressed a small, rigid envelope into my hand. Our fingers brushed, a fleeting contact that screamed of solidarity. "Thank you so much," Lisa said brightly, standing up with her papers. "No problem," I replied, giving her a weak, patient smile. Back in Elena's car, the envelope felt like a brick in my purse. At home, locked in the bathroom, I opened it. Inside was a tiny, button-like camera Lisa had described, a pinhole HD device with adhesive backing, and a second, even smaller device, a GPS tracker, a note in Lisa's precise handwriting. "Cam for inside. GPS for you. Clip-on bra strap. So I always have your location. Tomorrow, I'll have eyes from the tree line. Transmitter at 8 a.m. You are not alone." Installing the camera was the highest risk maneuver yet. I needed a place with a view of a common area, where they might talk, but where it would never be discovered. I settled on the living room. A large, framed vintage map of Central Park hung on the wall opposite the main seating area. The thick, ornate wooden frame had a deep groove at the top. That evening, while David was working late and Elena was preparing dinner, I staged another clumsy moment. I accidentally spilled a glass of water on the floor near the map, while Elena went to get a mop. I quickly, with hands steadied by sheer terror, peeled the backing off the tiny camera and pressed it into the shadowed groove at the top of the frame. It was invisible unless you were looking for it. The minuscule lens had a wide-angle view of the entire sofa and armchair area. The charger for the camera was a discreet USB plug. I ran it behind the map frame and down the wall, plugging it into an outlet hidden behind a heavy bookcase. It looked like any other forgotten charger cable in an old house. Now, I had eyes inside. Dinner was a quiet, tense affair. David came home looking genuinely stressed, which for once had nothing to do with me. The grant deal is hitting last-minute snags. The lawyers are being impossible. I might have to be on calls late into the night, he said, rubbing his temples. "I'm sorry, darling," I said, pouring him a glass of wine. "You work so hard for us." The S was a deliberate needle. He gave me a tired smile. "It's worth it. For our future." He took a long swallow. "How was PT? Painful, but good." Chloe said I'm progressing well. I took a small bite of salmon. "David go out tomorrow. At the lake. Could you maybe meet us there after? Sort of as a surprise? So my first big walk ends with you?" I asked, layering hope and vulnerability into the question. He froze, his fork halfway to his mouth. I saw the swift, almost imperceptible panic. He couldn't be there. He needed an alibi. "Oh, honey, I wish I could. But this grant thing, the final signing is tomorrow morning at 9:30. I have to be in Midtown. It's why I pushed for your walk to be at 9, so I could call you right after and hear all about it before I go into the meeting." The lie was smooth, woven with just enough plausible detail. The meeting time matched the murder window perfectly. I let my face fall, projecting disappointment. "Oh, of course. Your work is important. Next time," he promised, reaching over to pat my hand. "We'll go together. A celebration walk. After dinner, he retreated to his study for his calls. I planted myself on the living room sofa with a book, positioning myself so I could see the hallway to the study and the kitchen. The hidden camera was a silent witness above me. Around 9 p.m., Elena finished cleaning up and approached the study door. She knocked softly, then entered, closing the door behind her. My body went rigid. This was it. I pulled out the burner phone and opened the app Lisa had synced to the camera. A black and white, slightly fisheye view of our living room appeared. I toggled the audio on. For a moment, there was nothing. Then, the study door opened and David stepped out, followed by Elena. They stood in the hallway, just in the frame of the camera. All set for tomorrow? David asked, his voice low but clear through the phone speaker. He had a sheaf of papers in his hand, looking every bit the busy executive. Yes, Elena said. The stronger pills are in her evening tea. She will be drowsy, unsteady by morning. It will look natural. My blood ran cold. So that was the dose. They'd already started. Good. David nodded. The kayak renter confirms. He'll be on the water by 8:45. He knows the spot. He's experienced at this sort of retrieval. And you? Your meeting? A conference room at the Waldorf. Plenty of witnesses. My phone will be off. In the meeting. Perfect alibi. He glanced toward the living room, and I dropped my eyes to my book. My heart hammering. Is she settled? On the sofa. Reading. She is quiet. Keep her that way. The last thing we need is a burst of nervous energy. He leaned closer to Elena, his voice dropping to a murmur the camera barely picked up. After tomorrow, it's just us. Remember Costa Rica, the house on the cliff. Think about that. He kissed her, briefly but possessively, on the mouth. Then he turned and went back into his study. Elena stood for a moment, a strange, unreadable expression on her face, before smoothing her apron and walking back toward the kitchen. I stopped the video feed on my phone. I had it, crystal clear, damning audio and video. His admission about the kayak renter and the retrieval, the dope tea, the alibi, the kiss. It was all there. A direct recording of the conspiracy. The triumph was immediately drowned by a wave of visceral terror. The stronger pills are in her evening tea that I hadn't drunk my tea yet. It was sitting on the side table, cooling. I had to handle this perfectly. I couldn't refuse it outright. That would raise suspicion. I picked up the cup, took a tiny, pretend sip, making a face. Ugh, it's gone cold. I called out toward the kitchen. And it tastes bitter. Elena, did you use a new brand? Elena appeared in the doorway. It is the same. Mrs. Miller, perhaps your taste is off from the medication. Maybe, I said, rising unsteadily. I'm going to bed. I'm feeling suddenly very tired. That part wasn't a lie. The adrenaline crash was brutal. I left the full cup on the table. Just leave it. I'll get water upstairs. I made a show of being unsteady on my feet, which wasn't hard. As I passed the study, the door was ajar. David was on his actual phone, speaking in his professional, clipped tone. Yes, the final exhibits are attached. I'll see you at 9:30 sharp tomorrow. Looking forward to closing this. I paused, leaning against the doorframe. He looked up, covered the phone's mouthpiece. Everything okay? Honey? Just saying goodnight. I whispered. Good luck with your big meeting tomorrow. He gave me a thumbs up and a warm smile. Thanks, sweetie. Sleep well. Big day for you too. I climbed the stairs, each step heavier than the last. In my bedroom, I clipped the GPS tracker to my bra as instructed. I checked the burner phone one last time. The video file was saved, backed up to a secure cloud drive Lisa had set up. I lay in the dark, the transmitter button for tomorrow clutched in my hand. The house was quiet. Downstairs, my untouched, poisoned tea sat cooling. In the living room, a silent camera kept watch. And in my mind, David's recorded voice played on a loop. He's experienced at this sort of retrieval. The trap was set. Bait, cameras, evidence, backup. All that was left was for the predators to take the stage. Wednesday, 9 a.m. Willow Pier. I closed my eyes, not to sleep, but to visualize every step, every word, every possible move. The performance of my life was over. Tomorrow was the final, deadly show. The digital clock on the nightstand glowed 5:47 a.m. I hadn't slept. I had spent the night in a state of hyper-alert meditation, rehearsing movements, visualizing the path, feeling the weight of the tiny devices hidden on my body. The GPS tracker was clipped to my bra. The live transmitter button, smaller than a dime, was secured inside the collar of my soft gray Henley with a dot of fabric glue. My phone, with the damning video file ready, was in the zippered pocket of my fleece jacket. In the pre-dawn gloom, I was a walking surveillance, sweet disguised as a convalescent. At 7 a.m., I performed my final act of domestic deception. I shuffled into the kitchen, where David, already dressed for his big meeting in a sharp charcoal suit, was gulping coffee. He looked wired, his eyes bright with a nervous energy I now recognized as homicidal anticipation. Morning, I mumbled, making my voice thick with fake sleep and the lingering effects of the sedative I'd pretended to take. I leaned heavily on the counter. Big day. Sweetheart, he said, coming over to kiss my cheek. His cologne was overpowering. You excited? Nervous, I said, avoiding his eyes. My leg feels heavy. That's just the nerves. You'll be fine. Elena will take good care of you. He said it like a promise. A death sentence. I've got to run. This signing is a monster. Remember, my phone will be off during the meeting, but I'll call you the second I'm out. I want a full report. He squeezed my shoulders. This is a new beginning. Sarah, for you. I thought. Drive safe, I whispered. He was out the door with a final, confident wave. The house felt different with him gone. Lighter, yet more dangerous. The chessboard was set, and the king had left the scene, believing his victory assured. At 8:15, Elena approached me. She was dressed in practical, dark-colored athleisure, clothes that wouldn't show water stains. I realized with a chill, we should leave soon, Mrs. Miller, to avoid the later crowds. Okay, I said meekly. I made a show of being unsteady, fumbling with my walking stick, a handsome, polished oak one David had produced, far more suitable for a tragic accident than a clinical crutch. The drive to Prospect Park was silent. Elena concentrated on the road, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. I stared out the window, activating the transmitter with a subtle press through my jacket, a soft, almost inaudible click in my ear. A bone conduction earpiece Lisa had given me yesterday confirmed the link was live. Testing. Sarah, can you hear me? Lisa's voice was a ghost in my skull. Calm and clear. I coughed lightly, a prearranged affirmative signal. Good. I'm in position, northeast of the boathouse. In the tree line with a clear view of Willow Pier, I see a single kayak on the water about 200 yards out. Male occupant. He's just drifting. Police are on standby. My emergency dial is open. Just get me the words. Sarah, get me the push. We parked in the familiar lot. The late October morning was crisp. The sky hard, cloudless blue. The park was peaceful, dotted with joggers and dog walkers. A world utterly oblivious to the murder about to unfold in its midst. The normality was a surreal backdrop. The path is this way, Elena said, her tone forcibly light. She took my arm, her grip firm, almost pinching. It was not a supportive hold. It was a steer. Thank you, Elena, I said, my voice trembling authentically. It's so pretty. David was right. I needed this. We began the slow walk along the paved path that skirted the lake's edge. The water was calm, reflecting the fiery autumn trees. Willow Pier, a long, wooden finger stretching into the deeper part of the lake, came into view, It looked idyllic. It looked like a perfect place to die. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs, but my mind was cold, clear. I scanned the tree line to the northeast. I saw nothing, but I knew Lisa was there, watching through binoculars, her phone recording. The pier is supposed to be very stable, Elena said, guiding me onto the wooden planks. The sound of our footsteps changed from the crunch of gravel to a hollow thump, and the view at the end is the best. We passed a couple holding hands, then a man with a fishing rod. As we moved further out, the pier emptied. It was just us, the water, and the distant, drifting kayak. My eyes darted to the railing, about 20 feet from the end. I saw it. A section of the wooden handrail looked slightly darker, as if recently stressed or tampered with. The bolts seemed loose. I made sure of it last week. We were 10 feet from the compromised section. Elena, I said, stopping suddenly. I let my breathing become labored. I'm dizzy. I need to stop for a second. I leaned heavily on my stick, turning to face her, putting my back to the deadly railing. A flash of impatience crossed her face. We are almost there. The view will make you feel better. Just a moment. I gasped, clutching my chest. I was stalling, making her commit, getting her on record. I feel strange. That tea last night, did you put something in it? Her eyes widened, just for a fraction of a second. The mask slipped. Do not be ridiculous. Mrs. Miller, you are just anxious. David told me. I pressed, my voice dropping to a shaky whisper she'd have to lean in to hear. About the plan, about Costa Rica. The change in her was instantaneous. All pretense of the meek, helpful Balmu vanished. Her face hardened. Her grip on my arm turned vice-like. What did you say? I heard you. In the sunroom. The kayak. The loose railing. The $3 million. I said it all clearly. For the transmitter. For Lisa's recording. Elena's breath hitched. Fear and fury warred in her eyes. The carefully staged accident was unraveling. And she was here, on the front line. You stupid bitch. She hissed, the accent thickening with venom. You were supposed to be asleep. You were supposed to be easy. Like the stairs were supposed to be an accident. I fired back, my own anger breaking through the fear. Did he push me, Elena? Or did you? She didn't answer. Instead, her gaze shot over my shoulder, toward the kayak. A signal. I followed her look. The kayaker had stopped drifting. He was paddling slowly, casually, closer to the pier. It was time. Elena's expression shifted from panic to brutal resolve. The game was up. The clean accident was gone. Now it was just murder. It does not matter. She spat. You will still end up in the water. With a sudden, shocking strength, she yanked me forward, off balance, and spun me toward the weakened railing. Her hands shoved hard against my back. This was the moment, the push, but I was ready. My months of forced inertia, of obsessing over this second, had honed a single, focused reaction. Instead of resisting her push toward the railing, I went with it, but I dropped my weight and pivoted on my good leg, using her own momentum against her. It was an awkward, graceless move, more willpower than skill, but it worked. Elena, expecting to shove a compliant victim, stumbled forward as my body suddenly shifted. Her chest slammed into the loose railing I was meant to go over. The wood groaned, splintered, but didn't fully break. She cried out, arms windmilling, half over the edge. Now, Lisa! I screamed, not a whisper, but a raw, piercing shout that echoed over the water. Everything happened at once. From the tree line, a figure burst forth, sprinting down the slope toward the pier. Lisa, on the water. The kayaker stopped his casual approach and began paddling hard, not toward the pier, but away from it, toward the opposite shore. And Elena, scrambling back from the edge, her face contorted with rage and fear, lunged at me again, not to push, but to grapple, to claw. You ruin everything. She shrieked. I raised my walking stick, not as a support, but as a weapon. I swung it in a short, hard arc. It connected with her shin. She howled, stumbling back. Then Lisa was on the pier, running toward us, her phone held high, capturing it all. It's over. Elena, back off. The police are on their way. Elena looked from Lisa to the fleeing kayak, her plan in total collapse. She made a desperate, animal sound and turned to run, down the pier, toward the shore, but she only got a few steps. Two uniformed NYPD officers, followed by a detective in a trench coat, Detective Cruz, I would learn, were already marching down the pier toward us, cutting off her escape. The distant wail of sirens filtered through the trees. Elena froze, trapped between Lisa and me on one side, and the advancing police on the other. Her shoulders slumped, the fight drained out of her, replaced by a hollow, stunned defeat. I turned my back on her, my attention snapping to the water. The kayak was a distant speck, frantically paddling for the far shore where other officers were already emerging from the trees. He's getting away. I pointed, my voice shaking with adrenaline. Detective Cruz reached us, his eyes sharp, taking in the scene, the splintered railing, my defensive stance with the walking stick, Elena's wild-eyed panic, Lisa with her recording phone. We have units on the other side. Ma'am, he said, his voice calm and authoritative. He won't get far. Now, who wants to tell me what the hell is going on here? I looked at Elena, who was being handcuffed by an officer, her head bowed. I looked at Lisa, who gave me a tight, triumphant nod. The live transmitter was still feeding everything to her. I took a deep, shuddering breath, the cold morning air burning my lungs. The fear was still there, a live wire in my gut, but it was now fused with a powerful, trembling relief. I met Detective Cruz's gaze. My name is Sarah Miller. I began, my voice stronger than I expected. That woman, Elena, and my husband, David Miller, just attempted to murder me for my life insurance. I have audio and video evidence, and I believe my husband is currently at the Waldorf Astoria, under the impression I'm already dead. The detective's eyebrows shot up. He glanced at the ruined railing, then back at me. Okay, he said slowly, pulling out a notebook. Start from the beginning. As I began to speak, the world rushed back in. The sound of the sirens, the chatter of police radios, the distant shouts from the other shore as the kayaker was apprehended. The sun, now higher, glittered on the lake that was supposed to be my grave. On the pier, surrounded by chaos and the first signs of justice, I leaned on my stick, not because I needed to, but because my legs were finally giving way. The performance was over. The trap had sprung, and I was alive. The calm, authoritative presence of Detective Raymond Cruz was the only solid thing in my spinning world. He stood between me and the handcuffed Elena, a barrier of worn trench coat and quiet competence. Start from the beginning. Mrs. Miller, he repeated, his pen poised over a small notebook. My throat was tight, dry. I glanced at Lisa, who gave me an encouraging nod, her phone still subtly angled to record. 2 days ago, I began, my voice scratchy. I overheard my husband, David Miller, and her. I pointed at Elena, who glared back with pure hatred, planning my murder. They were going to make it look like an accident during my recovery walk. Here, today, I gave him the brutal summary, the conversation in the sunroom, the mention of a handler in a kayak, the double indemnity insurance policy, the sabotaged railing, the sedative in my tea. As I spoke, his expression remained neutral, but his eyes grew sharper, flicking to the splintered wood of the railing. Then to Elena, "And you have evidence of this?" he asked. Yes. I pulled the burner phone from my jacket pocket, my hands trembling. I navigated to the video file from the hidden camera and hit play, turning up the volume. David's voice, clear and cold, filled the space between us. The kayak renter confirms. He's experienced at this sort of retrieval. The stronger pills are in her evening tea. The video showed him kissing Elena, discussing Costa Rica. Detective Cruz watched, his jaw tightening. He looked at Elena. Anything to say? She lifted her chin, her eyes defiant. She is lying. She is paranoid. The medication, the pain, she imagines things. That video is fake. She hates me because she thinks her husband favors me. Right, Cruz said, his tone utterly flat. He turned to one of the uniforms. Get a forensics unit out here. I want that railing bagged and documented as potential crime scene evidence. And get a squad to the Miller residence. Secure it. We'll need a warrant for a full search. He looked back at me. Your husband's location? He said he had a meeting at the Waldorf Astoria. A signing at 9:30. His phone would be off. It's his alibi. Cruz checked his watch. It was 9:17 a.m. He pulled out his own phone. Stepping a few feet away, I caught fragments of his low, commanding tone. Miller, David, Waldorf, probable cause for attempted murder. Apprehend, quietly, yes. He's likely unaware. He came back. Mrs. Miller, Ms. Chin, I'll need formal statements at the precinct. An EMT is on the way to check you over. I'm fine, I said automatically, though my whole body was beginning to shake with delayed shock. You're in shock, Lisa corrected, putting a steadying arm around my shoulders. Let them check you. Sarah, for the record, the next hour was a blur of controlled chaos. An EMT took my vitals and noted the superficial scratches on my arms from the struggle with Elena. A female officer gently but thoroughly asked me to recount everything again, her digital recorder whirring softly. I sat on the open tailgate of an ambulance, a foil blanket around my shoulders, watching as Elena was led to a squad car. She didn't look at me again. Detective Cruz returned, his phone to his ear. He listened, nodded. Copy that. Bring him to the 78th. I'll meet you there. He hung up and approached me. They have him. Took him out of a conference room. He went quietly, apparently, seemed confused. Confused, the word sent a dark, satisfying thrill through me. His perfect plan, his airtight alibi, shattered. Can I see him? The question was out before I could think. Cruz studied me. Not yet. He'll be processed. Read his rights. Lawyered up. It's better you give your full, uninterrupted statement first. Let the scene here settle. His eyes held a hint of sympathy. You've been through a trauma. Mrs. Miller, let us do our jobs. Your friend can take you home, a different home. I assume she's staying with me. Lisa said, firmly. The 78th Precinct House was a bustle of noise and fluorescent light. In a small interview room that smelled of stale coffee and industrial cleaner, I went through it all for a third time. This time with Detective Cruz and an ADA named Valdez, a sharp-eyed woman who took meticulous notes. I handed over the burner phone. Lisa provided the SIM card and the cloud login for the video backup. This is remarkably thorough, ADA Valdez said, a note of professional admiration in her voice. The premeditation is clear. Conspiracy, attempted murder, assault, insurance fraud. We'll add the initial fall down the stairs as potential aggravated assault. We'll need your medical records. Anything, I said. My energy was leaching away, replaced by a deep, bone-weary emptiness. It was late afternoon when Detective Cruz finally let us out of the interview room. We've executed the search warrant on your house. We found the second burner phone, the sedative prescriptions that match what was described in your tea. We're interviewing the kayaker, a low-level guy with a record for strong-arm stuff. He's already rolling on your husband, trying to deal. He paused. Your husband has requested to speak to you. Lisa stiffened beside me. Sarah, you don't have to. It's a tactic. His lawyer will be present. They'll try to manipulate you. I knew she was right, but I also knew I needed to see it. I needed to see the confusion replaced by the dawning horror of his ruined life. I needed that closure. Or maybe just that confirmation of the monster he was. I'll see him, I said, my voice quiet, with you and Detective Cruz present. It was set up in another, slightly larger interview room. David sat at a metal table, still wearing his expensive suit, but it was rumpled now. His hands were free, but a uniformed officer stood by the door, a man in a sleek, too perfect suit sat beside him, his lawyer, introduced as Mr. Thorne, no relation to my doctor. David looked up as I entered with Lisa and Cruz. The expression on his face was one I'd never seen before, a shattered mosaic of bewilderment, fear, and a desperate, calculating hope. He looked younger, vulnerable. The performance was gone, and what was left was raw and ugly. Sarah, he breathed, starting to rise. His lawyer put a hand on his arm, stopping him. I sat down opposite him, Lisa taking the chair next to me, Cruz standing by the wall, observing. Sarah, what is this? David's voice cracked. They pulled me out of my meeting. They said horrible things. That you were attacked? That, Elena. He trailed off, his eyes searching mine for the wife he knew, the one who would rush to reassure him. I said nothing. I just looked at him, letting the silence stretch, letting him see the cold absence of love in my eyes. His act began to fray. Honey, talk to me. Are you okay? I was so worried when I couldn't reach you. Save it, David. I interrupted, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. I heard you. In the sunroom. I saw you on the camera. I have the SIM card from your secret phone. The kayaker is talking to the police right now. His face paled, the blood draining away so quickly I thought he might pass out. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. The lawyer leaned in, whispering urgently in his ear, but David shook him off. His eyes locked on mine. It's a misunderstanding, he stammered, but the conviction was gone. He was flailing. A misunderstanding? Lisa snapped, unable to contain herself. You planned to have her drowned for $3 million. You sabotaged your own staircase. You drugged her tea. You hired a thug. That's a pretty specific misunderstanding. David flinched as if struck. His gaze darted to Detective Cruz, to the impassive face of his lawyer, then back to me. The calculation in his eyes died, replaced by a dawning, abject terror. He was a man staring at the edge of a cliff he'd built himself. Sarah, he whispered, his voice breaking. This time, it wasn't an act. It was the sound of a man whose world has just exploded. Please, I was under pressure. The debts. Elena, she pushed me. She seduced me. She planned it. There it is, I thought with icy satisfaction. The blame shift, just as I'd predicted to Lisa. You made sure of the railing last week. I stated, quoting his own words back to him. You talked about retrieval. You kissed her. You planned a life with my insurance money. She made me do it. David, the video has your voice, your face. He slumped in his chair, the fight draining out of him. The polished, confident David Miller was gone, replaced by a trapped, frightened animal. He looked at his lawyer, a silent plea for a miracle that wasn't coming. My client has nothing further to say at this time, the lawyer announced, standing up. This meeting is over. David didn't move. He just kept staring at me, his eyes wide with a horror that was finally, authentically, about his own fate, not mine. I stood up. I felt no pity, only a vast, hollow calm. Goodbye, David, I said, and turned my back on him. As Lisa guided me out of the room, I heard a sound, a choked, ragged sob that was quickly silenced by the closing of the door. In the hallway, under the harsh fluorescent lights, Detective Cruz gave me a brief nod. It'll take time. The wheels of justice grind slow, but with what you've given us and what we're pulling in, they'll both be looking at decades. You're safe now, Mrs. Miller. Safe. The word felt foreign. I was free of immediate physical danger, but the house of my life was a burned-out shell, The man I'd loved was a stranger who wanted me dead. The future I'd imagined was ash. Thank you, detective. I managed. Lisa wrapped her arm tightly around me as we walked out of the precinct into the cool evening air. The city lights were coming on. Your place or mine? She asked softly. Yours, I said, leaning into her. I never want to see that house again. As we drove away, the image of David's shattered face lingered in my mind, not as a wound, but as a trophy. The predator had stepped into the trap. The reckoning had begun. The sterile, buzzing quiet of Lisa's spare bedroom was a shock after the chaos of the precinct. I sat on the edge of the guest bed, still wearing the clothes I'd almost died in. The adrenaline had evaporated, leaving a profound, hollow exhaustion. My leg, which I'd ignored for hours, now throbbed with a deep, insistent pain. Here, Lisa appeared in the doorway, holding out a large glass of water and 2 ibuprofen. Drink, then sleep. You're running on fumes. I obeyed mechanically. The water was tasteless. The pills a dry swallow. What happens now? My voice sounded small, detached. Now, you let the system work, Lisa said, sitting beside me. Her lawyer voice was back, a protective armor of facts. Cruz and ADA Valdez have the evidence. They'll present it to a grand jury. It's a slam dunk. David and Elena will be formally charged. Their lawyers will try to plead it down. But with attempted murder and the conspiracy, Valdez won't deal. She's got political ambition written all over her. This is a career case. And me? You recover. You give your deposition. You work with the DA. You see a therapist, a good one. I have names. She put a hand on my shoulder. And you decide what you want the rest of your life to look like. But all of that can wait until tomorrow. Sleep was a fractured thing, filled with dreams of cold water and splintering wood. I woke at dawn, disoriented, the reality crashing back with the morning light. My phone, my real phone, was buzzing on the nightstand. Dozens of missed calls, texts, and voicemails. My mother, frantic. Friends who had seen the early news bulletins. Brooklyn woman foils murder plot at Prospect Park Lake. The media had gotten a hold of it. My private nightmare was now public spectacle. I called my mom first. Her relief was a torrent of tears and shaky prayers. I'm coming over. Lisa's? I'll be there in an hour. Before she arrived, Detective Cruz called. Mrs. Miller, we've completed the initial processing. We've recovered the burner phone, prescription records, financials showing large, unexplained cash withdrawals from your husband's business account corresponding to the alleged payments to the kayaker, whose name is Vince Tercelli. By the way, he's fully cooperating. We also found sanding equipment and wood stain in your garage consistent with tampering with a weathered railing. What about David and Elena? They're being held without bail. Arraignment is this afternoon. Their stories are diverging. I could hear the faint smirk in his voice. Elena's lawyer is pushing the coerced accomplice angle. Says David threatened her immigration status. David's lawyer is hinting at an affair gone wrong, that Elena was obsessed and acted alone. That David's comments on the video were him being humorous or going along with her fantasy. It's not going to fly, but they're throwing mud. He's claiming it was a joke? The absurdity was breathtaking. Desperate people say desperate things. Cruz said, ADA Valdez wants to meet with you tomorrow to go over your testimony in more detail. And there's another thing. David has submitted a formal request, through his attorney, to speak with you again. He says it's for closure. You are under no obligation whatsoever. In fact, I'd advise against it. I'll think about it, I said, but my mind was already made up. I needed to see the hole he dug for himself. My mother arrived, a whirlwind of hugs and homemade muffins. Her presence was a tangible link to a world before the betrayal. Over coffee in Lisa's sleek kitchen, the three of us formed a war council. The house is a crime scene. Sealed. Lisa summarized. You can't go back. We need to get your things, clothes. Personal items. Cruz can arrange a police escort. I don't want anything from there, I said, the thought of walking back into that beautiful tomb making me nauseous. You will, my mother said gently, with the practicality of her generation. Your photos, your grandmother's jewelry, your books. You don't leave pieces of yourself in a place like that. We'll do it together. The arraignment was a closed proceeding, but Lisa, using her legal credentials, got us into the gallery. It was a stark, formal room. David and Elena were brought in separately, both in jumpsuits, handcuffed. They looked smaller, diminished. David's eyes scanned the room and found me. He stared, a complex plea in his gaze, remorse, fear, a sickening thread of hope that I might somehow save him. I held his stare, my face blank, until he looked away, defeated. Elena never glanced at me. Her expression was stony, resigned. The charges were read. Conspiracy to commit murder in the first degree. Attempted murder in the first degree. Assault in the first degree. Grand larceny. Insurance fraud. The list was long and clinical. Their lawyers entered pleas of not guilty, a procedural formality. The judge, citing the severity of the charges and the weight of the evidence, denied bail for both. It was over in 15 minutes. As David was let out, he tried to catch my eye again, but I turned to Lisa. Let's go. The following days were a blur of necessary tasks. With a detective present, my mother, and I ventured back into Brownstone. It felt alien, haunted. I moved quickly, robotically, grabbing only what felt essential and untouched by the recent past. A box of childhood photos, a few pieces of jewelry from my safe, my favorite worn sweater. I left everything David had ever given me. I met with Ada Valdez in her downtown office. She was all sharp angles and focused energy. We're building an incontrovertible case, she said, spreading photos on her desk. The shattered railing, the kayak, the hidden camera, screenshots of text messages between David and Torselli arranging the fishing trip. The digital forensics on the burner phones are a goldmine. We have a timeline of the conspiracy going back weeks. Your testimony is crucial, but the physical and digital evidence is what will put them away for life. What about the first fall? The stairs? I asked. We're treating it as a separate, prior assault. The sanding equipment. Witness statements about David's unusual home improvement project that weekend. It's circumstantial on its own, but as part of the pattern, it's devastating. It shows long-term premeditation. The media storm was constant. Reporters camped outside Lisa's building. My name and picture were everywhere. I was alternately painted as a tragic victim, a brave survivor, and, in some darker corners of the internet, a manipulative woman who had driven her husband to it. Lisa handled all inquiries with a terse no comment. The psychological toll hit in waves. In quiet moments, the images would return. David's cold eyes in the sunroom. Elena's hands shoving me. The deep, dark water. I'd wake up gasping. Loud noises made me jump. I felt both hyper-alert and completely numb. Dr. Eris Thorne, my orthopedic surgeon, called me personally. Sarah, I saw the news. I am so terribly sorry. This is unimaginable. His voice was warm with a professional compassion that felt genuine. How is the leg holding up through all this? It hurts, I admitted. The simplicity of the physical pain, a relief to confess. Stress and trauma can amplify pain perception. I want you to come in. Let's check the healing. And I have a colleague, a trauma psychologist, Dr. Evans. She's excellent. Would you allow me to make an introduction? I agreed. It was the first step on a new, arduous path of healing, one for my body and my mind. A week after the arrest, Detective Cruz called again. Elena's lawyer has been in touch with the DA. She's offering to testify against David, to give a full account of the planning, in exchange for a reduced charge, manslaughter instead of attempted murder. My stomach clenched. Will Valdez deal? She's considering it. Elena's testimony could lock David in forever. It's a strategic call, but Valdez wants to know how you feel about it. I thought of Elena's hands on me. Her hissed, "You stupid bitch." She was just as guilty. But the cold, logical part of me, the part that had outwitted them, understood the calculus. I want David to have the maximum sentence. If her testimony ensures that, then I can live with it. All right, Cruz said. There's one more thing. David's request to see you. He's been persistent. It's your call, Sarah. But if you do it, we'll record it. It could be useful. And I'll be right outside. I looked out Lisa's window at the city below. A world moving on. I thought of the man I'd married. Now a stranger in a jumpsuit. I needed to look that stranger in the eye one last time. Not for closure, but for confirmation. To solidify the monster in the shape of the man I'd lost. Set it up. I told Cruz. Tomorrow. The visitor's room at the Brooklyn Detention Center was a study in sterile desolation. Pale green walls, a scuffed linoleum floor, and a thick pane of plexiglass dividing the space in two. Phone receivers rested in cradles on either side. It smelled of antiseptic and despair. I sat on the hard plastic chair, Lisa a solid, silent presence beside me. Detective Cruz leaned against the back wall, his arms crossed, a neutral observer. My palms were dry. My heartbeat was a slow, heavy drum. This wasn't fear. It was the grim anticipation of a final autopsy on my former life. The door on the other side of the glass buzzed open. David entered, flanked by a corrections officer. He wore a standard issue, orange jumpsuit that hung loosely on him. The confident, sharp-suited man was gone. In his place was a thinner, paler version, with shadows under his eyes and 2 days of scruff on his jaw. His hands were cuffed in front of him. When he saw me, a flicker of something, hope, anguish, crossed his face. He shuffled to the chair, and Saturday picking up the receiver slowly. I lifted mine. The line had a faint, hollow hum. "Sarah," he said, his voice crackling through the cheap speaker. It was the same voice that had whispered love into my ear, that had coldly planned my death. Now it just sounded broken. I said nothing. I just watched him, letting the silence do the work. He looked down at his cuffed hands, then back at me through the smudged glass. You look okay." It was a pathetic opening. "I'm alive, David. That seems to be the part of the plan that failed." My tone was flat, devoid of the anger I'd expected to feel. There was only a vast, cold emptiness. He flinched. I don't know what to say. This is all a nightmare. It's real." I corrected him softly. "The handcuffs are real. The cell is real. The video of you and Elena planning to have me retrieved from the lake is very, very real." I leaned forward slightly. "You wanted to talk. So talk." He took a shaky breath, his eyes glistening. Was he summoning tears? I found I no longer cared. It wasn't supposed to be like this. He began, the words tumbling out in a rehearsed-sounding rush. It was the pressure. "Sarah, the business. I was in deep. Debts you didn't know about. Bad investments. I was going to lose everything. The house. The cars. I was ashamed. I remained silent, waiting. And then Elena," she started. She listened. She was sympathetic. One thing led to another. He hung his head. The picture of remorse. She put the idea in my head. The insurance. She said it was a way out. For us. For me. She manipulated me. "Sarah, I was weak. I was desperate. I never wanted to hurt you. I loved you." The last sentence was a whisper, aimed directly at the heart of the woman I used to be. It was a masterful performance of victimhood. The pressured husband, seduced by the scheming other woman. I almost admired it. "You loved me," I repeated, my voice devoid of inflection. "So you loosened the bolts on the staircase railing?" That was an act of love. His head snapped up, his eyes wide with genuine shock. "The stairs? No, that weighs an accident. I would never." The forensic team found the sanding tools. "David, The ones you used to weaken the wood to make it look old and rotten. The same tools you used on the pier. I let that sink in. You tried to kill me twice. Once for practice. Once for real. Which part of that was Elena's idea? His mouth opened and closed. The coerced accomplice narrative was crumbling under the weight of the forensics. The stairs changed everything. They showed initiative, premeditation that predated Elena's involvement. It had got out of hand. He stammered, abandoning the seduction angle. I was in over my head. I was terrified of losing you, of you seeing me as a failure. I thought if you were gone, it would be clean. The debt would be gone. The shame would be gone. It was a sickness, a moment of madness. A moment. Lisa, who had been listening on an extension, couldn't stay silent. You planned it for weeks. You hired a man. You sabotaged public property. You drugged her. That's not a moment. David, that's a campaign. David's eyes darted toward the sound of her voice, a flash of anger breaking through the penitent act. This is between me and my wife. I am not your wife, I said, the words falling like stones. Not anymore. The divorce papers will be filed next week. I am the woman you tried to murder. That's the only connection we have now. The finality of it hit him. His shoulders slumped, the last of his theatrical energy draining away. The man who was left looked simply scared and small. What are they saying? My lawyer, he says they have a strong case. He talks about pleas. They have video. David, I said, relentless. They have financial records. They have the hacker, Vince, who is describing in detail the retrieval job you hired him for. They have the physical evidence from the pier. And now they have Elena. She's cutting a deal. She's telling them everything. How you planned it. How you promised her a life in Costa Rica. How you kissed her in our sunroom. His face went ashen. The last card in his hand, shifting blame to Elena, had just been burned. He was alone in the hole he dug. She's lying, he whispered, but there was no force behind it. She's saving herself. I corrected. And you're left holding the bag. For everything. The silence stretched. He stared at me, and for the first time, I think he truly saw me, not as his wife, not as a problem to be solved, but as Sarah Miller, the person who had outmaneuvered him, the person who had survived him. Why did you come here? He asked finally, his voice hollow. To see you like this. I answered honestly. To make it real. To look you in the eye and know, without a doubt, that the man I loved is gone, that he was never really there at all. A single tear traced a path through the stubble on his cheek. This one looked real. It wasn't for me, it was for himself, for the ruin of his life. I'm so sorry, Sarah, for all of it. You have to believe that. I stood up, the plastic chair scraping loudly in the quiet room. I don't, I said, my voice clear and steady in the receiver. I don't have to believe a word you say. Your remorse is worthless to me. The only thing that matters now is the truth. And the truth is, you're a murderer who failed. And I'm going to make sure you spend the rest of your life in a cage, thinking about that failure every single day. I saw it then, the last spark in his eyes, the final flicker of the arrogant, controlling man, snuffed out by the cold certainty of his fate. Not by my anger, but by my absolute, unwavering indifference. Goodbye, David. I didn't wait for a response. I placed the receiver back in its cradle with a final, soft click. The connection severed. I turned to Lisa and Detective Cruz. I'm done here. As we walked out of the detention center, the cold autumn air felt clean and sharp. The meeting had given me nothing I needed, but it had taken everything he had left. His last shred of hope. He'll plead, Cruz said as we reached his car. After that performance, his lawyer will tell him a trial is suicide. He'll take whatever deal Valdez offers to avoid life without parole, probably 25 to life, with Elena getting 15 to life for turning on him. I nodded, looking up at the gray sky. The legal machinery would grind on, but for me, it was over. The confrontation was done. The confession, such as it was, had been extracted. There was nothing left in that room but a stranger in an orange jumpsuit. "Let's go," I said to Lisa, sliding into the passenger seat. I didn't look back at the grim building. The past was sealed behind those walls. The future, for the first time in months, was an open road, and it was mine alone to walk. 6 months later, the keys felt cold and insignificant in my hand. I stood in the echoing, empty living room of the Brooklyn brownstone. The morning light streamed in, highlighting the dust motes dancing in the space where our furniture once was. It no longer felt like a crime scene, just a shell, a beautiful, empty shell. "Sign here, and here," said the perky real estate agent, Brenda, pointing to the lines on the closing documents spread on the makeshift table, a cardboard box. I scrawled my signature, Sarah Miller, for the last time on anything connected to this address. The finality of the pen stroke was a quiet, powerful thing. "Congratulations, Ms. Miller," Brenda chirped, oblivious to the history. "The new family from Boston is just thrilled. They have 2 little girls who are going to love that backyard." I managed a smile. "I hope they're very happy here." And I meant it. The house deserved a fresh start, just like I did. The proceeds from the sale, after paying off the mortgage and David's legal debts, a satisfying irony, were substantial. It wasn't Costa Rica money, but it was freedom money. My next stop was downtown. The offices of New Horizons Educational Outreach were housed in a renovated loft, bright and noisy with the sound of curriculum planning and copier machines. I had traded my 3rd-grade classroom for a role designing literacy programs for underserved schools. It was a step back from the front lines, a chance to heal while still contributing. My new boss, Marianne, waved me over. "Sarah, perfect timing. The feedback from the pilot program at PS 112 is in. The teachers loved the new phonics modules. They're asking for more." "That's fantastic," I said, feeling a genuine spark of professional joy. It was a small flame, but it was mine. I'll start drafting a Phase 2 proposal this afternoon. Later, over lunch with Lisa at our now usual salad place, the conversation turned, as it often did, to the final act of the legal drama. "So, Valdez called," Lisa said, spearing a cherry tomato. "Sentencing is next Friday. No surprises. David took the deal. 25 years to life. Eligible for parole in 20. Elena got 15 to life. The judge is known to be harsh on domestic homicide conspiracies. They'll serve the max." I nodded, taking a sip of iced tea. The news landed not with a bang, but with a soft, settled feeling. "Good. That's it. Good." Lisa smiled. The old Sarah would have given a 10-minute soliloquy on the nature of justice. The old Sarah hadn't spent 60 grand on therapy. I replied dryly. Dr. Evans had been worth every penny. The nightmares were rare now. The jumpiness was fading. The hollow feeling was being slowly filled with new things: work, painting classes, long, pain-free walks. He's a ghost. Lisa, a sad, dangerous ghost locked in a box. I don't waste energy on ghosts. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Hi, Sarah. It's Mike from the community center painting class. A bunch of us are grabbing a drink after class next week at Murphy's if you're free. No pressure." I showed Lisa the screen. She raised an eyebrow. "Mike? The guy who helped you carry your easel that first day? The one with the, what did you call it? Uncomplicated smile." It was just a smile. "Lisa. Uh-huh. And are you going?" I typed back a quick reply. "Sounds fun. Thanks. See you in class." I looked at Lisa. It's a group thing, with an easel carrier who has a nice smile. It's not a cliffhanger. It's a start. She corrected gently. The following week, I found myself on the balcony of my new apartment, a cozy 1-bedroom in a quieter part of Park Slope with a view of treetops and brownstone rooftops. It was furnished with things I'd chosen myself. A deep, comfortable sofa, bookshelves filled with my favorites, and on the walls, my own attempts at watercolor landscapes for my class. They weren't great, but they were vibrant and full of light. The late spring air was warm. I held a mug of tea, my leg fully healed, strong, propped on the railing. No boot, no crutch, no stick. My phone rang. It was my mother. Hi, sweetie, just checking in. Big day tomorrow. Sentencing day. I'm not going. I said, You're not. I could hear her surprise. The ADA will read my victim impact statement for me. It says everything that needs saying, but I don't need to be in that room. My peace doesn't live in that courtroom. I meant it. My statement was concise, not vengeful, but stark in its description of betrayal and loss. It was enough. Oh, Sarah, I'm so proud of you. Her voice choked up. After we hung up, I stayed on the balcony as the sun began to set, painting the sky in oranges and purples. I thought about the long, dark tunnel of the past year, the fear, the fury, the ice-cold planning, the piercing relief on the pier, the hollow months of picking up the pieces. The scar on my calf was faint now, a reminder, not a wound. My doorbell rang. It was Lisa, holding a bottle of wine and a bag of takeout. Figured you shouldn't be alone on the eve of the technically not an apocalypse. We ate. We talked about work, about her latest dating disaster, about my possibly not a date group, drink tomorrow, normal stuff, healing stuff. Later, as she was leaving, she hugged me tight. You know, for a woman who was almost drowned. You're walking pretty damn tall. I smiled. Practice. After she left, I stood again on the balcony. The city lights twinkled on, a galaxy of resilience. I wasn't the woman I was before the fall. That woman was gone. And in a way, David had killed her. But I wasn't just a victim who survived, either. I was something new, something rebuilt, stronger in the broken places, cautious, but open, quietly proud, and finally, undeniably, free. I lifted my mug in a silent, solitary toast to the past, laid to rest, and to the wide, unknown, promising shore of tomorrow.